Fatality. In under 2 hours. Hey everyone, Ryan Reed here, and today we are talking about the 2021 version of Mortal Kombat that just came out this last weekend. And I gotta say, before we start that, I am a Mortal Kombat fan. I grew up playing the games. I've seen the original 1995 movie, but I wouldn't call myself a mega fan. In other words, I don't dive into the lore and, all of that stuff. I do know, some of the backstory of some of the characters and things like that. But, I enjoy Mortal Kombat, I enjoy playing the games, but I wouldn't say I'm the world's biggest fan. The only reason I bring that up is because I know there are some people who are mega fans and who have had some problems with this movie in terms of like some of the stuff they've changed and things like that. I totally respect that. I understand, because if it was a series or a movie franchise or something like that and I was a huge fan of something and they changed things about it, I would probably have problems with it too. But I look at it more as this is a, movie based on a video game from the 90s where they dressed people up in cheesy Halloween costumes and it was known for its gratuitous violence. And so to me, that's the type of, viewpoint I was going into this movie with. And that all being said, I actually really enjoyed it. I think in that regard, this movie succeeds fairly well. There's not a whole lot of plot to talk about, so there will be some minor spoilers if you want to avoid everything, but there's not a whole lot going on in this movie. A group of good guys are getting together to try and team up before a group of bad guys can come in and kill them all before a tournament of Mortal Kombat, which will decide which universe basically takes over. And if Earth and like our universe loses, then essentially we're doomed forever. That's the plot of it. And it's basically just, a framework to hang crazy action and violence on. And like I said, in that regard, I think this movie really succeeds. You get a lot of great characters. Of course, Scorpion and Sub-Zero are in it. You also get Kano and Raiden and a bunch of other characters are in the movie. Some where they're only in it for about 5 seconds before they're killed off in some gruesome way. But, really, I didn't go into Mortal Kombat expecting Citizen Kane or, some sort of, indie art film or something. I went in expecting to watch some martial arts that ended in fatalities, and that's exactly what I got out of this movie. In fact, the opening scene, which is a fight between who will become Sub-Zero and who will become Scorpion, is fantastic. It's so well choreographed and so well put together. The fatalities are great. Of course, there's like, if you know some of the fatalities, the famous ones from the series, you'll get to see a lot of those. Again, I won't spoil some of them, but there's some pretty grisly ones that are awesome and well put together. Everyone seems to be having a really good time making this movie. The direction, the acting, the script, all of it seems to come together and knows exactly the type of movie that it's making. So it's cheesy and it's kind of stupid, but I mean that in the best possible ways. Again, we're talking about a franchise that's based off a video game where you basically fight people and then you can rip their heads and their spines out. Like, there's not a lot of plot needed, and this movie doesn't really mess around with a lot of plot. It is there. We're introduced to a new character named Cole and kind of his journey, but it's also a movie where characters don't question things. A guy who can control the snow and the ice, the weather comes to kill our main character and his family. They jump in a car with Jax, and then Jax is basically like, you gotta leave to protect your family, and the guy's like, I gotta leave to protect my family, and stuff like that, where there are moments where people be like, do we want to question how that breaks reality, or do we want to question, like, all of this stuff? Nobody cares. None of the characters ever stop to wonder exactly what's going on. It's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna fight Mortal Kombat. That's pretty much it. They give like an exposition dump to Sonya Blade, who basically explains everything like, I studied this is what's going on, this is what's gonna happen. And everybody just goes, okay, great. The movie continues on. There are some leaps of logic, in the movie. Little things that, like, if you really stop to think about them, you're like, why would you say this at this time? Or why, like Scorpion speaks Japanese the entire movie, which is awesome. I really like how diverse the entire cast is, and people are, unlike the 1995 when people are cast appropriately for their characters. And so yeah, the entire movie, Scorpion speaks Japanese, except for one moment where, of course, he says, the famous line. He says, "Get over here." And but you know what? I didn't care. Like, it makes no sense why he would just say that one line in English, but it's the coolest moment in the movie, and I rewound it to watch it again because it's so well done. And so, again, yeah, you could look at this movie, and some critics have, and some people have, and go like, this doesn't make any sense, this is dumb, this is ridiculous. But, like, who cares? It's Mortal Kombat. Like, it's just fun. I mean, the movie, once it gets going, yeah, it's an hour 50 minutes. There's about 10 minutes of credits, so it's an hour 40 minutes of actual content. But once it gets going, it doesn't stop. Like, even scenes that are kind of exposition scenes or things like that, or, you know, they're supposed to be emotional scenes, they speed through those. Like, there's moments where Jax, of course, gets his robot arms, and he's trying to, like, figure that out. And it's like, okay, great, we spend, like, a few minutes, but even that seems like it should be emotional, but they're just kind of like, all right, great, yeah, we're rushing through it, all right, oh, I'm sad because I have robot arms. Next scene, let's see somebody fight each other. And it's like, cool, I'll take that. You know, the movie never slows down, and that's a good and a bad thing to some degree. You know, it never really gives you any breathing room, but if you're just there to see, like, action and crazy, well-choreographed fight scenes, and again, violence and fatalities and all of that stuff, you're gonna have a blast. I can't imagine somebody sitting down to watch it expecting that and not enjoying it based on that, if that makes any sense. Like, I sat down to watch this last night fully knowing the type of movie I was about to sit down and watch. And I think sometimes people forget that. You know, sometimes you just need to check your brain at the door. Like, sometimes you just need to be like, I'm going to turn off my brain for a little bit and watch something kind of stupid and cheesy, but a lot of fun. And I think that's why a lot of people still like the 1995 one, because honestly, in my opinion, it's not a very good movie. It wasn't a very good movie back in 1995, and it's not a very good movie now, but people like it because it's stupid and it's nostalgic and they enjoy it. And that's kind of what this movie is. To me, they're kind of, yeah, they're different, but they're the same in that regard. They're both stupid, fun action movies that don't really care much about, you know, plot. It's more of like a vehicle to be like, let's see this character fight this character. And that's what this movie is. Again, I could sit here and nitpick some of the, you know, the writing or the dialogue, or, you know, like I said, weird choices where suddenly characters have powers, like they develop their powers, but it doesn't make sense. Like, certain things, like Jax has these, like, weak robot arms, but then when he finds his power, his robot arms turn into strong robot arms, which makes no sense whatsoever. Like, why are some of the powers mechanical, so it's magic metal? Like, it's dumb. It's dumb. Let's be honest. It's dumb. But it's fun. Like, I wasn't sitting there going, I had that moment where I was like, that makes no sense. And I was like, I don't care. Like, because then, like, 5 minutes later, Jax crushes some dude's head with his metal arms. And I'm like, cool. That's all I wanted. Like, and again, if you're looking for, like, a ton of characters and stuff, they're there, but, like, if you want, like, a lot of depth for, you know, some of your, like Katana or things like that, it's like, it's not happening. No one cares. No one should care. It's just fun. Again, there are some flaws, besides those little things that I was talking about that, yeah, if you really wanted to, you could look at and break down and break apart, but, like, actual flaws and problems I had with the movie. Again, the pacing is great for an action movie to get you to those set pieces, but it feels almost like there were scenes removed. Like, maybe they actually had some of those slower moments, and maybe an executive or an editor or somebody was like, just take that out. We don't need that. And you really don't, but it does make the film feel very rushed, where you're suddenly, like, jumping from this, and this. And so it feels fast. Again, that's a good and a bad thing. I think even one or two moments of just slowing down the pace, because even like a dinner scene, we're all sitting down and having dinner, is ultimately a test your might scene where they're trying to get Kano to you know, figure out what his power is. So little things like that could have helped the movie. I'm not saying you have to slow down the movie a ton, but just one or two real breathing moments where you can go, okay, before we get into the next big fight scene. One of the other problems I've seen a lot of people having is that it's Mortal Kombat, they keep building up the tournament, and the tournament doesn't actually happen. But that didn't bug me so much. What did bug me is I read an article with the writer, And basically, in his mind, he's setting up a trilogy. Nothing against the guy who wrote this or anything. Whatever. I get it. But, like, he even talks about it being like, in a post-Avengers world, this is how I wrote this movie. I wrote it where it's like, part 1 is going to be before the tournament, part 2 is the tournament, and part 3 is after the tournament. It's like, dude, you're planning a 3-part trilogy before you even know if your movie's a success. Like, you should focus on the movie at hand. And so that it's kind of got a little bit of that vibe, which again, I don't know if that's a fault of the writer, or maybe it was the studio, wanting to build this universe stuff. That seems to be the big thing. But it really is just kind of like the feel of the movie in a post-Avengers, post-Marvel world. And that's a shame, because I think people have kind of lost sight of just making a good movie. It used to be you'd make a really good movie, and then if the movie did really well and was successful, you'd figure out a way to do a sequel. I'm not saying that's a better way to do it, because sometimes you had like shoehorned in sequels where you're like, what? Why? Does the movie stand on its own? Absolutely. But you can feel it being an origin movie, building to something bigger. And then it never quite gets there, because it's trying to be a part 1 instead of being its own thing. And then we can get to a part 2. If you want to plan a part 2 in your head, like, if I had the opportunity, this is where it would go. Great. But you can't really set the groundwork for that in a movie before you even know if you're going to have a second movie. And I think that's a problem. Don't put the cart before the horse, as they say. You don't plan ahead when you don't even know if you've got a franchise yet. So there was a little bit of that. Other than that, though, I mean, that's such a minor thing. The movie ends on not a cliffhanger, but it's setting up, Johnny Cage being in the next one. Like, oh, he's going to Hollywood to find him. They end up on a poster of him with his belt. They don't show that whoever the actor is, because they probably hadn't cast him. Which, by the way, Joel McHale, I think, was the voice of Johnny Cage in one of the animated ones. If they don't get Joel McHale to play Johnny Cage, they are just completely doing this wrong. Anyway, I digress. Oh, one more thing that I want to talk about before ending the video. Something hopefully they can maybe incorporate into the future movies, if there are future movies. There's a lot of cutting between the fights. So it's a lot of this character's fighting, and we're cutting to these two characters fighting, and we're cutting back and forth and cutting back and forth. I don't really want to see it like that. It was fine for this. I like the idea of focusing on one fight, so it feels like a centerpiece, and then we move on to the next fight. Because the cutting back and forth between stuff wasn't bad, but it made the fights feel rushed. There were definitely fights that felt like they were 2 seconds long and they were over, and then we're back to another fight. Versus kind of enjoying watching each individual fight. But again, minor thing. Maybe they'll fix that in the future. Who knows? Ultimately, Mortal Kombat, the 2021 version, I had just as much fun with it as playing one of the games or watching the old movie, which honestly I haven't watched in years. But if you go in expecting something kind of silly, cheesy, well choreographed, violent, all of that stuff, you're going to have a blast. I've seen it 50-50. Some people love it, some people hate it. But ultimately, I think it really comes down to what you're expecting going in. Don't expect something with a lot of depth. If you go in expecting what I was expecting, fights and violence and fatalities, you'll have fun. But if you want to see more videos like this, you can definitely check out some of my other impromptu reviews on the channel. I've got a ton of them. You can also check out Fright Films, which is my horror movie analytical show. You can check out some of my artwork videos, all kinds of stuff on the channel. So take a look at those. Subscribe if you want to see more. I really appreciate it. It helps me out. And I'll see you guys next time.